and welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with your hosts, Daniel.
And Daniel.
Daniel, it's been a little longer than we were expecting, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. I know you're going to give me guff for it, and so I'm just going to bring that up in the air right now. If you're watching us live, we're a day later than we normally are. Yesterday was Memorial Day, and it was a holiday.
Yeah.
And my in-laws wanted to hang out a bit, so I had to reschedule last minute, unfortunately, to figure that out. But we're back, which is good news.
Tell them the reason why we're a little perturbed. We had a plan.
So, yes, you guys have heard us talk about our friend Dammit Dom, and he was going to be a special guest this episode as we're doing this. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to reschedule him. That'll be the following week.
Yeah.
But he'll be back next week, and actually, it'll be less than a week because we're later in the week right now.
Yeah, it's Tuesday.
Again.
It's 6 days away.
Yeah, it's 6 days away. It's fine.
The audio listeners are not going to hear a difference. The YouTubers are not going to see a difference. But, and the thing about it, too, is that I had to do a lot of changes in the room, plus getting us set up for the program that we were going to do next week.
Yeah.
That took some time for me to do.
Well, it's already...
Now that it's done...
Now that it's done. We're good. We're golden. It's great. It'll be fantastic. Anyway, so this is kind of a filler episode. Hope you're not expecting anything great because this episode... Actually, no. This
is a fine episode. We were trying to figure out what we were going to do. This was originally what we penciled in before we found out the special guest. Mm-hmm. So we just moved. We were originally going to turn this week's topic into what we were going to do.
Yep.
Now it's just going to become the board game breakdown for this month. And so therefore... we're not really out of sync on our schedule either.
That's right. So why don't you tell them what this episode is this week?
This was an interesting topic that you came up with that you, when you told it to me, we came up with the idea to make it more open-ended than originally what we were thinking about doing. And so what we're talking about here is games that do it better. And what do we mean by that? Well, I don't know. We could be talking about the theme. You know, what everybody thinks about's going on. We could be talking about a certain type of mechanism or a certain thing that... think about like our compare and contrast when we're talking about two different games that kind of have a similar feel. This is us doing a short summary of what games we think does that certain thing we're talking about better.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll clarify which one. I actually broke mine down into like multiple different categories and stuff, and I tried to pick like the best example of those. That wasn't my original plan. But when I came up with, or when you came up with, told me that we're doing this list, I was sitting there and I'm like, okay, well, this was the one that I definitely think of. Oh, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then that, and I kept going, and I had 15 within like 20 minutes.
I had 8.
Which is very rare for a game.
I had my 8 really quickly. I mean, I looked around on this, and I'm like, oh, this does this does that, this does that. And so I have a good mix of theme, mechanisms, type of game, type stuff. Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting top 8.
Yeah. How much crossover do you think we're going to have?
Probably not many.
Oh, okay.
No.
You don't think any at all?
I don't think... I say exactly 0.
Wow. All right. I think there might be one. We'll see. We'll get to it when we get to it. I know there's definitely some on mine that I don't think that you have, but we're going to find out in that. But before we get into that on today's episode, Daniel, what have you been playing?
So there's a couple things I want to talk about that I've been playing. I'll end our segment here with the new games I've been playing. I want to talk about games that I've been recently playing that I've talked about before, but I'm really liking where they're going. Both of them are campaign-style games. In fact, one of them, which I'm going to talk about right now, I talked about last week on the Top 8 debate. And it's Ticket to Ride Legacy Legends of the West. Play 2 more scenarios of that game.
So you're up to 4 now?
I'm up to 4, yep.
Okay.
It is fantastic. In fact, I was telling my wife about it. We were discussing it after we played it. It's moving up there like one of my favorite Legacy games I ever played. I legitimately bought it because one of our friends has never got to play a Legacy game at all. Like my wife, her husband, and myself all played Pandemic Legacy Season 1 together as a group with another friend of ours. And when that friendship group fell apart, that Legacy group fell apart. And when we started gaming with them as a couple, she's never had she's played campaign games. In fact, I'm going to be talking about another one here in a little bit. But she's never played a campaign game or a Legacy game where you're making modifications or you're destroying stuff. The only one she's really played is like Gloomhaven, where you just take stuff out of the box. This way you can reset it for you to start a whole nother campaign, different and do different things.
It's disingenuous to call it a legacy.
Yeah, that is straight up a campaign. This one there is permanent modifications, whether it's to the board, to cards. You don't know what's going to happen. Same thing with Pandemic Legacy. There are permanent things that's going to happen to the board that you're making based on your choices in the game. And yeah, so we've been going. And what I really love about this one, which is phenomenal about this game, and what really is moving it up there for me, is when you played Pandemic Legacy Season 1, when we played Betrayal in the House on the Hill, those games tended to go a little longer when you had a full contingent. When we had 5 for Betrayal Legacy, that took about an hour and a half to 2 hours. When you played Pandemic Legacy at 4 players, it took about an hour to 2 hours, depending on the scenarios and what you're doing. We played 2 games of Ticket to Ride Legacy that only took an hour and a half. We played the 3rd and 4th scenarios, and it took us an hour and a half to play both of those games. We immediately reset everything we needed to reset and went right into the next game. The first game took us 45 minutes. The next one took about 45 to 50 minutes. So relatively the same length of time between the 2 scenarios. The first 2 scenarios that we played were roughly the same length too. That's why I'm like, I really, and my wife likes it too. It's like, it doesn't feel like we're playing the same game over and over again because it plays so quick. It doesn't feel like you're playing like a long stretch of Ticket to Ride. It's just like boom, boom, boom. Oh, we're already done. Okay, cool. Boom, boom, boom. We're already done. Cool. Let's reset. Let's run that back. Let's see what else is going to happen. And I love, and I'm not going to get any spoilers here, but I love some of the stuff that changes as you go. There's a reward for the winner. But there is a great mechanic for the person who loses a scenario to be able to keep up and try to win into the next scenario. So it's not really hand-holding, but it makes things very thorough.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a whole loved experience by everybody.
Yeah, and we've been enjoying it a lot. We're, I think, on game 7 now. We're past the halfway point, and we're enjoying it too. But the last one we played was definitely longer. So,
nice. Okay.
But I've heard it does pick up throughout the game.
Yeah, that's what we figured as much too. As you're expanding the board in a sense, it's going to become more and more.
Right. Yeah. You don't expect 5-minute games after that. Sure. All right. The first game I wanted to talk about is a game that I have not played in probably about 5 years up until this last weekend. I was at my local shop and teaching some games, and I brought this along and. We were talking about this before the episode. It was Memorial Day weekend, graduation weekend for a lot of our college students
and our high schools.
And the weather was trash. And when all of that happens together, there's very little attendance for our game nights. And unfortunately, that was true here. We had 2.5 other people. I say half because one guy who's mostly a regular, he came in, stopped in for a bit, hung out with us, and then left.
I thought you were just talking about there was a baby there.
No, don't have humans. A chainsaw juggler showed up. Yeah, he's only my half brother. Anyway, but I got some of the employees to play the games, which was great. And we played this game, and I had to refresh myself on the rules because it had been a long time since I played it. And I brought it out, and I remembered why I like this game so much. This is Cosmic Encounter.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't even finish the game, but we played it at 4 players.
Shenanigans.
It was absolute shenanigans. As we were playing, like I told all the employees, all the players, I'm like, look, it's not going to make sense at first, but we're going to walk through it, and as we play, it'll start to make sense. I'm not going to hold your hand. You'll make your decisions. And immediately, they started throwing me to the curb. Like, just so, like, absolutely. As it should be. They were, like, because I played as a character. So the way Cosmic Encounter works is pretty simple. You're trying to colonize 5 other planets. Mm-hmm. And the way you do it is you're part of the offensive. Whenever an attack is successful, then you get colonized on that planet. And so, if it's your turn, for example, and you decide to attack player number 3, if I align with either you or the defense and we won, I get a benefit somehow. Mm-hmm. And the thing is...
Strong negotiation, too.
It's very strong negotiation. And when was the last time you played it? Give or take.
Probably about a year or 2. I want to say the last time I played it, I think Nate Wood was still here.
Okay. All right. So a few years, probably.
Yeah.
All right. So every player gets a choice of alien. Like they get dealt two, and then you choose one of them. I was this alien, the McCore or something like that, where all of my ships normally they count as 1 point. Mine are 4.
Yeah.
It's just massively huge, and I was just the big guy.
Yeah.
And immediately I was the threat, like, which was hilarious,
As it
should be. And I just love that, like, that push and pull of like, yeah, like, hey guys, I can come in here and handle that. And they're like, no, we got it. And because you can only help like
If they
ally
agree.
if they offer,
Yeah.
or if they even ask you. If they don't ask you, then you're on your own. You're not invited to the party, right? And so I was pretty much the threat as it was, and they would have to either all go for me or just cut their losses and just accept the victory and run away with their tail between their legs. Because if we had anything close to the same attack power, I would floor them because of how big my characters were.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious when that was happening, and because of that, there was so many like deals and negotiations happening that I was just not allowed to be part of under any circumstances. And it reminded me how just absolutely absurd and ridiculous that game is. However, one of my friends, I forgot that he absolutely hated negotiation games. So I brought it out the night before, getting ready to play. I'm like, yeah, I just got to refresh my memory on it. We're about to play. And then, like, halfway through setting up, he was like, wait, is this that negotiation game? Yeah? It's like, no, I'm out. I'm good. I'm like, oh, well, then let's just put it away then. He's like, no, you go ahead and play. I'm like, no, it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like, I'm not going to make you sit and wait and watch us play. No, I'm not that kind of person. Although I did briefly consider it.
Yes.
I'm not that. No, I'm not. I mean, although that's one of those.
You made us play Frederikus, all right?
That was without me knowing how bad it was. If I knew how bad it was, then you have every right to get mad at me.
Just by the cover, it looked really
There's
bad.
plenty of ugly games that are amazing components.
Okay, to the point, and this is a running gag with us. Damn it, Dom always tries to win games. That's his thing. He targets to try to win games.
Sure.
He knew he was going to lose this game, and he purposely ended it.
Yes. Yeah, he forced the end. But no, Cosmic Encounter.
Phenomenal.
I love that idea. It works so well, and I was so happy to be part of that game night because I'm like, I remember how fun it is, and because of how slow it was, it's so rare I get to sit down and play the games with, and man, it was so good.
Good question. What do you prefer, Cosmic Encounters or the retheme under Game of Thrones?
I like both a lot. I mean, I own both.
Yeah.
And the Game of Thrones game is the only Game of Thrones game that feels like Game of Thrones.
Well, yeah,
because
of the backstabbing and the negotiation.
So much negotiation and backstabbing and wheeling and dealing in it that it's incredibly thematic. I've not seen that in any other game.
The Game of Thrones board game from Fantasy Flight is close, but oh my god, that feels like you're in the Game of Thrones books. Not even the TV show. Yeah. In the books, it lasts so long.
It's like a 6-hour game. It's so ridiculous. And I have enjoyed my time playing it.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I don't own it anymore for that reason.
I'm glad I played it once.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
All right, so moving on to my next game. I talked about how I've already played this one, and I've talked about it recently. But we've been going more into this one again. This is another one of our campaign games that we've been playing, Role Player Adventures. In fact, Thunderworks enjoyed the photo I put of it in our Instagram. So if you want to go see what photos we've been playing lately, go check us out on Instagram.com/everydayboardgames.
Shameless self-promotion.
Yes.
Love it.
So we played the fifth scenario. And what I want to talk about this, I don't want to do too many spoilers per se for people that want to get into this one. But this one felt like we were like, okay, we're doing really good. It felt a little easy at times. We're like, okay, we're doing something really cool, or we're just really good at what we're figuring out the puzzle and how to do this thing. Mm-hmm. And when it ended, we're like, really? That's it? Did we miss something? It was a little anticlimactic. So, like, all right, well, let's just move on. Let's go to the end. And then we read the end of the scenario, like, oh. And now that's where things hook me, because when we're playing, it's like, okay, this is cool, I like this is neat, okay, moving on to the next scenario, this is really cool, and stuff like that. You really feel like you're getting into the campaign, you're feeling like you're getting into that RPG, and then there's that little hook, that twist, where you're just like, oh,
suddenly
wow,
that real.
Yeah, and it was fantastic, because we were all sitting there like, really? That was the fourth scenario. It was a little too easy, and two, it just didn't feel epic where we're doing the thing we're supposed to be doing.
No.
And we're doing a little side tangent too, and we did all that. It just felt anticlimactic, and we're like, all right, well, let's just move on. It read the end scenario, so this way we can get ready to go play I think it's going to be the 5th scenario, which is what we're going to do, because this was the 4th scenario we did. We're on our way to the 5th scenario. When we read the end of the 4th scenario, we were like, oh, that is cool. Okay, all right, now I see why it felt, because they were leading up to what was about to happen.
Sure.
And so, yeah, no, we've been having a great time playing this game. It's been such a fantastic game. And for those who don't know what Role Player Adventures is it takes the Dungeons and Dragons character builder role player game called Role Player, where you're building the characters, and you're actually running a campaign, in a sense, on their little map where you're reading stories and stuff like that, where you're moving on, and whether you win or lose in a scenario, you move on to the next one. So just like you would in a Dungeons & Dragons campaign and stuff like that. It's really well written, and it's more about dice manipulation. So you're building a pool, whether it's skill checks or dice checks. You're playing cards out to help mitigate what you've rolled, because there's sometimes you have to meet certain exact matches, like the die in the pips have to be a 6 purple.
Sure.
Or you need to do this one could be a white 2 or higher, or it has to be exactly a 2 purple. And so you have to figure out who can manipulate what. Okay, I have the ability, like if I sacrifice this on my character, like charisma or whatever it is, I can get us a purple die into our pool, because I can manipulate the purple dice based on my card plays and stuff like that. So yeah, it is fantastic how this works. We've been having a blast playing it, and so the dice manipulation and the puzzle aspect of it, my wife was like, we should make it harder. I'm like, we can't make it harder unless we put it into legendary mode, but you have to make the decision at the very beginning of the game to make it legendary mode. And so we can't really go back and change it. And then when she saw this twist, she's like, never mind. And there was a little bit of a struggle in this one. We had to really finagle our dice, our card play.
Yep.
And then we had to be smart about how we took our rest, too, because you only get one rest during the entire scenario. And that's how you reset certain cards or allow yourself to heal up, because if you ever fatigue so much, you're out.
Yeah.
And so we had to be real smart how, and so there was a lot of going on in that. But yeah, it is fantastic. I'm really enjoying it. And I got 2 expansions that I need to get played off of it, too, so can't wait for that.
That's awesome. And yes, Creative Chaos, you should eventually check it out. I don't know, maybe. I don't know. If it's your style, cool. If you like fantasy.
If you're into reading, I think the books are much better than the show, but the show is fantastic, except for like the last 2 seasons.
Yeah. All right, the next game I wanted to talk about was a game that you and I both played. I brought it over for our most recent game night, and this was definitely the highlight of the night.
Okay, it was this one. That's why I didn't put it on my show.
Yeah. Exactly. Lord of the Rings, it's okay. Actually, I like Lord of the Rings. I just had to get that reaction. So this game that we played, this was the highlight of the night by far. And that's a lightsaber. That's Star Wars. Lord of the Rings is what we're talking about.
I know.
No, it's Star Wars.
I'm gonna beat you with it.
Yeah, that's a different movie, dude. Like,
I don't have Sting in the house, so I'll beat you with a lightsaber instead.
So this game that we played, it's a pretty meaty Euro game that we were excited to play. It's kind of a worker placement, action selection kind of like game. This is called Barcelona.
It's very interesting. It's hard to describe the mechanisms because there's so many moving parts.
Right, exactly. And that was one thing that, like, when we all went into it, we're like, okay, we know there's going to be a lot of moving parts. We know there's going to be a lot of things that we have to consider. It was about a 25-minute teach, to get it down. But that was, like, the first game of the night. And we're like, all right, we're ready to go. We're ready to game. We're going to hit this one hard. And it took us, I think, 2 hours.
Yeah, give or take. Actually, I can look up the stat.
Yeah, about 2 hours-ish or so. And the way this game works is pretty neat. You're getting points in a number of different ways. You're building up Barcelona based on this gentleman named Serta, I believe. And he was an architect. He's basically the inventor of modern urbanism or whatever.
Hour and 50 minutes. So with the 20-minute teach, it took us an hour and a half.
Yeah, so hour and a half. And so what you're basically trying to do is you're trying to build up those city blocks of Spain. Or I don't think it's specifically, well, I guess it's Barcelona.
It's downtown Barcelona.
Yeah, downtown Barcelona. And you're trying to build these blocks up. But that's not your main point. You're also trying to help with the Sagrada de Familia. You're also trying to help with getting tourists like around the area, sending out citizens, having them move into city blocks. You're also trying to appease the Serta himself for different ways of points. And
if you build too much, you make him mad.
Yeah, if you build too much, he's not happy about it. But he's also the multiplier at the end of the round. It's really wild. So the way it works is cool. You have 2 citizen tokens that are hexagonal, and you're going to put them at a city block intersection. And you put one of them on top of the other, so you can see which one is on top. You don't really see the one that's below.
Yeah.
And you set it down at a city block, and you get the action that's in that column, in that row, and if it's in one of the ones diagonal in the middle, you also get that third action as well.
And usually in the diagonal, you have to pay a cost.
Yep, normally you have to pay more. And so you're trying to figure out which of the 2 actions are the best to do. Do you lay down cobblestone to help get more resources? Do you send out your trolley to get more people everywhere and send out your citizens? Or are you trying to build up the Sagrada? There's a lot of different choices you can make on it. But once you get that basic idea, it's pretty straightforward. What makes it so cool is that after you've placed on your worker and you take your actions, if there is a city block that is capable of being built somewhere in the town, you must build a block. You don't have the choice of waiting, even though one might be worth more points. You must build if available. And the citizens that are used to build it, there's either 2 or 3 citizens, and sometimes they need either high class, middle class, whatever. Those get put on a track down at the bottom, which tells you generally how much buildings are worth, but that also triggers when the rounds are done. When each of those rounds score, you score a certain thing based on the multipliers on the Serta track versus whatever aspect it was, score the points, then carry on to the next round, which will be a different scoring mechanism. It's wild.
Yeah.
This game, it has a lot going in it, but I see what people were ranting about.
Oh, no, it's a fantastic game. I was shocked how much we actually really did enjoy it.
Yeah.
I knew we were going to like it.
And I'm just happy I got it used. I'm going to give a shout out again. I don't remember the name of the company, or the store, but it was up in Denver.
Okay, yeah.
That they do.
Was it Black and Red?
Black and Red. That's it. Thank you. Black and Red. I got it for fairly inexpensive. I want to say I got it for like $30, which is normally like a $70 game.
Yeah.
And it had promos in it, and this game. Very much not played. I guess somebody probably got it. It was like, oh yeah, maybe this is a little heavier than I was expecting.
Too much, yeah.
Yeah.
But
very worth it. Very worth it.
It was a fantastic game.
I'm really getting impressed with Board and Dice, the company that publishes it. I'm really impressed with their stuff.
A lot of their stuff has been really good. I do have one on my floor of shame over here behind me. It's called Origins First Builders. I do want to get that one played. But Teotihuacan was really good.
Yep.
What was the other one? Some of them are good. Some of them are kind of like it's hit or miss. But I see why everybody's saying Danny Garcia is like one of the next big Euro designers coming out, because he's got another one called Windmill Valley coming out. Yeah. Which we saw at the Gamma Expo, and it looked fantastic too. So I'm interested to see how that one works. And our mutual friend Dammit Dom has that pre-ordered.
Right. Exactly. Now there is one drawback to it that I think sets it from being. Or keeps it from being excellent, in my opinion, is that you never. It doesn't feel thematic, first off.
No.
Even if it did,
but honestly, you can't really knock that when it comes to these heavier Euros.
A lot of heavy Euros do this thing where it's there's a lot of avenues to get points, but if you spread yourself too thin, you're not going to get many points. But even if you specialize in a spot, you're still not going to win.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like we talk about in our topic debates. It's an abundance of good options, and if everything is a good option, then nothing's a good option.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You just have to be smart how you do it. You got to be not really a jack of all trades. You have to master in some stuff and maybe dabble in a little other stuff.
Right, but even then, I feel like somebody could arbitrarily pick locations and probably still get away with it.
Oh, yeah.
Doing a pretty well.
I mean, I ended up winning the game, and that's what I was doing in the beginning, because I'm just like, let me just figure out what I got to build off.
Let's just see what I can do. I'm going to go send my citizens where I understand right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And then see where that takes me. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's what I was doing in the beginning of the game. I'm like, okay, now I get this. Now I moved up on this track. But I honestly, this was my game of the night last week. No, there was another game. I don't know if you're going to talk about it, but that was a fantastic game, and that was a fun one. It was the last one we played of the night. I don't know if you're going to bring that one up. The DuBarry game.
DuBarry game?
Yeah, wasn't it Phil DuBarry that did the last game of the night, Stellar Conflict?
Oh no, that's James Ernest.
James Ernest. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it might be both, but
I don't know. I thought it was
James Ernest for sure.
I remember you brought a DeBerry game.
Yeah.
So yeah.
1 minute to play, 10 minutes to score.
Score.
Yeah.
That was a fun game, but I really like Barcelona, but it felt like it needed either a little less or just something a little bit more to get higher than what we personally rated it. Now, we haven't done our actual review for it. Don't know if we were going to get to it, maybe somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
But personally, my personal aesthetic to it, I give it an 8. I thought it was a fantastic game.
Sure.
But it's not perfect by any means, or like something that, we were talking about it there. I'm like, I'm glad he owns it because my other group is not going to like it.
Exactly. And I'm kind of of the same mind. It's like, yeah, probably an 8 or so.
Yeah.
I might bump it up more with more plays, but as of right now, it wasn't that hard to grog. Like, it was pretty easy to understand.
It's pretty simple, yeah.
But, I wouldn't say simple, but it was easy to understand.
Simple enough for us.
Right. Yeah, but what it didn't do, again, it just didn't... I feel like tighter restrictions make it more meaningful sometimes.
Yeah.
But I digress. We're getting into, like, review territory. What's your next game?
The next game I'm going to talk about is one of the first newer games. I'm going to save my favorite game on this list for last, and I'll explain why here in a little bit. But the next game I'm going to talk about is a new one for me. Actually, just recently picked it up and got it off my pile of shame over here really quickly. And that is Nova Roma. We saw this again at the Gamma Expo. I was kind of explaining to you how it worked a little bit. And you're like, okay, that seems interesting. I enjoy this game. My other game group, not so much. And it's funny because it's kind of an engine builder that does a lot of stuff like Targi in a sense, where you're getting like in Barcelona, you're getting the row and the column. The power is based on how many people are in said row or column, and they just felt like it had too many rounds. Where some engine builders don't have enough rounds, they feel like they're just getting that engine firing, and I'm like, I just can't win with you guys. Too much, too little. What's going on here? But I found it fantastic. I like the Miko's art on this one. It works really well. Again, I like that worker placement aspect of it. Is like you're going to take the action of the area you're going to get. There's like these 5 or 6 different actions, and it's so modular because they're going to change throughout the game based on how you're going to set up the board.
Yeah.
So one game, my actions could be this column will be this action, whereas this column or row here will be this action. Next game around, they could be completely in different spots, and so that's pretty neat. I also like the fact that the first player person is going to dictate where I guess you would say the Emperor is going to be placed, because this is all about the theme on it, and very rare theme, or the theme is there. It's non-existent really. Is that this is the movement of to Constantinople, Byzantium, in a sense, the new Nova Roma, New Rome. This is going to be the new capital of the Roman Empire, and so you're basically building and trying to get the favor of the Emperor by placing your, I forget what they're called. I call them senators, but they're called something else, and they're basically becoming more powerful depending on what's going on. You're doing chariot races. You're trying to get up on that track. You're doing, there's quite a few tracks in this thing. You're exploring a little bit. You're trying to go out in a little bit. It's just, there's a lot of moving parts on this one. But just that action that intrigues me so much about this game. It's kind of like Targi, when you place your character, you get the cross section. This one is, you place it in there and you do the cross, like in Barcelona, but it becomes more powerful. So when someone puts out the Emperor, he's only got 2 spots he can either go in. You just get to choose where it is because it's based on the tile flip. But where you put him is going to make one of those areas more powerful. So you're trying to put him where you need it if you get the selection. And the next thing I like about it too is one of your actions is that you can pay to take the first player action. If nobody takes it that round, and then the first player cannot, for his first action, take the first player marker. He could do the other part of that action, but he cannot take the first player action. And so if you choose no one takes it, it moves to the next player. The first player has to move it to the next person in line. So the first player cannot keep first player. It will always move unless he actually pays to keep it. And so I like that. And it's not Parliament because it deals with the Roman. They're senators, but they're called something, and I can't remember the term for the life of me right now. But yeah, no, it's really well done. It is a bit of a long game, especially when it comes to the teach, because you have to explain what every action does and why it's important to do this
Yeah.
one or that one, or why you're getting these resource tracks and stuff like that. And then your little bingo board that you're doing as well. There is a lot of moving parts, and I understand why they're not a huge fan of it. I think our other game group, like Damn It Nom and Gamehead
Yeah.
Geek, will enjoy it, and I think you'll be okay with it. I think
Sure.
you're going to agree with them that it might overstay its welcome. It might be a little too long or too heavy,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's a fun game. I would rate it a 7. I really enjoyed it, but yeah, Nova Roma, fantastic, but my other game group did not like it.
That's a shame. So this next one, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
How, if you're playing a game, like let's say a competitive 4-player game,
Okay.
what is like the most amount of time in between your turns that you would be comfortable with? Like you take your turn, then player 1, player 2, player 3, then back to you.
Well, it depends on which group I'm playing with.
It,
On
Average.
On average,
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know, I would say 5 minutes or so I'm okay with. Other than that, I'll probably end up being checked out. That's why I always sometimes I learned to put a sports game on in the background because our old game group, because there'd be long periods of time before my turn, so I'd just be like, oh, is it my turn now? Okay, cool.
All right. Then what about like a team versus team game? How long would be okay for like the team to play?
Team versus team.
Yeah.
Again, it also just depends on the player count as well. But if you want to keep it quick and snappy, again, about maybe 5 minutes between turns or so, just for the simple fact that with the team there has to be a lot of discussion too.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I may give it a little more leeway to like say 10 or something like that. But
Okay. And then the last comparison, what if like it's fully cooperative but asymmetric, so like one player and then a team of other people. How, if you're the one player and you give the team information, how long do you want them to deliberate? Or what would be like probably your top amount?
if I'm like the one, basically like I'm a clue giver and you want them to
Yeah,
deliberate.
like let's say like Mysterium, for example, and you give out all the cards.
Luckily,
assuming that
those games
yeah,
have a timer on.
they have a
them.
timer, right? But let's say you absolve the timer, they all agree, house rule, no timer. What's like the amount of time that you're comfortable with?
Probably again back into like the 5 minutes, but honestly, for that kind of game, probably about 2 minutes would be a good time frame. 2 to 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. So the game I play that I'm going to talk about, it's a game called Message from the Stars, and this
Oh
is from
no! Please don't tell me you hate this game because I really want to try it.
no. So here's the thing, right? I played it with my friend Clint. 2 to 3 minutes. Yeah. I played with my friend Clint, our mutual friend Jim,
Mm-hmm.
and our friend Katie, and we played on a Friday night. And I was the alien that was decoding the messages
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And it was interesting to play on my side because then I would give them the clue, and they would have to use logic to try and figure out if this letter was here, could it be here, like how you deduce which letters could do. Now, our mutual friend Jim, he's like a savant when it comes to like logic puzzles
Oh yeah.
and stuff like that, right? There's 4 rounds or 4 turns. Like I give them a message, they give me a message. That's a turn, right?
Okay.
On the 3rd turn, after I give them the 3rd message, before they had given me the 4th message, they were deducing it for more than 50 minutes. And yet I still enjoyed it quite a bit.
Oh, okay.
Right. That's what surprised me. And it was to the point where both the guys, they both stopped and like, Danny, I have a feeling you hate this right now. I'm like, no, actually, I'm finding this interesting. Now, granted, within that time, I was listening to them go onto the correct information, almost completely suss it out, and then go, wait a minute, but what about this letter? Does this work? And completely derail themselves to something that I couldn't like fathom. At the 30-minute mark, they both look over because our friend Katie, she was being pretty quiet. They're like, Katie, what do you think? She was like, I think you guys are just overthinking things. And we all just burst into laughter because it's like, yeah, no kidding. And I was able to read 2 rule books during this time. And so I was sitting there and I was just busting out rule books and I was reading through them because I was like, I can't give any more information, but I see what you're saying. And then they're also trying to like decide what word to give me to to prove or disprove certain aspects of it.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not allowed to talk. And despite that ridiculous amount of time, because really, I don't think there's been any other game that I've played where anything close to that would be okay.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree.
But it was still kind of cool. Like, it was fun watching them. It was also fun, partially because I know how well Jim works. Because I've done escape rooms
you
for that
do
guy.
an escape room business with him.
We run an escape room business, right? So, like, I already know how his brain works when it comes to puzzles, because we do escape rooms a lot, right?
Yeah.
But Clint didn't. And so he was watching this, and he was like, wait, and here's the reasoning, and I liked watching that from the outside perspective, and he was like, wait a minute. I'm like, no, hold on. Just give Jim a minute. He'll figure this out. Like, just throw it at him, and we're like, all right, Jim, decipher this cipher, and I give you 5 minutes. Like, take care of what you gotta do. And he's like, all right, hold on. And he'll just do it. It's fascinating. And so it was probably fun because of that aspect alone, and I was just being silly about it. But that was probably an hour and a half game total. And we got a perfect score.
Nice.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, especially for first time, too.
Yeah, I think it was like a perfect score, like 11 out of 12 points or something like that. We did really good. And because we allowed that process of thought. So, yeah, I know. Very cautious entry point, right?
Yeah.
But this is one of my favorite all-play games that I've played.
I do want to check this out. It's one that's been on my radar that I want to try.
It will break your brain.
Oh, it always does.
Yeah, but more than
those
most.
kind of logic, like Search for Planet X and stuff like that, the deduction style games, they do break my brain a lot when you're trying to figure out stuff.
Yeah.
And the way this one is supposed to work, where it's like a co-op kind of think Mysterium in a sense, as you brought up, that kind of thing, that's where I'm like, I think I think my other game group would enjoy it. I just don't know if they would like it for that extended period.
Yeah, no, probably not that. And here's the thing, like it's less about like, like let's reason out the part. No, there's a lot of if then. If you like puzzles like Sudoku or like logic puzzles like Picross, it's like if this is here, then this must be true, or like. Like absolute legitimate logic puzzles, like logic word puzzles and stuff. If you like stuff like that, then this is probably the most akin game to that I've seen, other than maybe Turing Machine.
Yeah.
So yeah, a message from the stars.
All right.
Very interesting experience.
The last game I'm going to talk about is a game that I picked on my game night a few weeks back.
Okay.
It's a game you and me both love, and I got to play my pretty edition of it. And this is Castles of Burgundy Special Edition. Awakened Realms knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
I really love the components in this game. I love the acrylic stuff that I have for it.
Mm-hmm. Those acrylic tiles are nice.
That I am going to end up replacing with the 3D model tiles. But I'm not going to play that all the time. It's mainly going to be the acrylic tiles, but when I want to make a pretty map, I'm going to use those 3D stuff like what the castles were. I like the castles on them. But yeah, the acrylic tiles are nice. Just the cardboard tiles are really nice too. And like, I'm talking about like the special edition, but like just the base special edition, the cardboard is really thick. I love the fact that you have all the expansions in this game. We played with a few of the expansions, just some of the extra buildings and stuff like that out of there.
So the geese.
The geese.
Was it ducks?
No, it was geese.
Was it geese?
Okay, it was geese. The geese, the crane and stuff like that. Yep. So we had some really cool stuff with it. I love the recess boards, but they're not really recess boards. But what you do is you put your little map into the board, and then you put a little honeycomb thing over the top of it. This way it doesn't allow the pieces to scatter and stuff like that. They stay in place. I think that was fantastic. This way you can move your stuff in and out. You still have your honeycomb thing. The acrylic or the tiles are really nice. Really easier to see this time. I love the fact that they changed the castles to more of a burgundy color, because castles are burgundy. They made it a burgundy color rather than the dark brown to go with the greens and all the other colors. And you're like, wait, which one is this one again?
Yep.
That was a smart decision on that, making it more colorblind friendly.
Yep.
It was fantastic, and the fact that it's still one of my favorite Feld games of all time.
Oh yeah,
and awesome. it still holds up. It's what, 10, 20, or not 20, but like 12 years or so old, and it's still a fantastic game. We haven't played it with the newest expansion yet, the Vineyards, but just because I wanted
Sure.
to get to the table. It's been a couple years since I played Castles of Burgundy, and honestly, yeah, it's going to get played more and more because it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It is really well done. Awaken Realms really knocked it out of the park.
And I mean, for $100, like that's a really great
Yeah,
production. That's better than most $100 games.
Yeah, it is a fantastic $100 game, and the thing about it is, even if you like, they just recently had it on GameFound. If you don't want any of the extra stuff that I have, like the Sundrop stuff, the coin or not the coins, the Sundrop stuff,
Mhm.
the other 3D terrain is what it is, or the
Yeah.
acrylic. The standard edition of the special edition is really well done. It's only what $90 on that recently on the GameFound.
Yeah.
So it's fantastically well done. Awaken Realms needs. They're going to do it again for Puerto Rico, so I can't wait to see how they do that one because they really knocked it out of the park with this special edition of Castles of Burgundy.
Nice. Very cool. And the last game I wanted to talk about today was a very strange little game. The original title is Palais Geflüster, and yeah, you heard me. And this is a game that was technically only released in Germany by a designer named Michael Reineck, but apparently back in 2007, a bunch of Google employees were playing this game at like their lunch game sessions or whatever, and they really liked it, and they contacted the publisher and said, "Hey, is there any way we can make a Google version of this game?" And I was looking more into it. This little card game, I don't think it came in a box. I think it just came in a shrink wrapped plastic. They had, they put a Google theme on it, and it's about installing apps onto your server or whatever, right? I mean, it's super googly. But it's based off of a game called Palace Whispers from Germany, and we played it. And the way it works is pretty interesting. You have let's say five people. You have each player is their own color, right? So I was blue. Another player might be green or yellow, whatever. If I play a card that has a color on it, that color is who takes the next turn,
Okay.
and then they must play a card from their hand. In which case, it would continue from there. There's also two sets of gray cards where if you play that, whoever has the fewest apps takes the next turn. So it's a little bit of a catch-up mechanism.
Yeah.
If there's a tie for fewest, the player who played the card chooses who goes out of the tied players, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Which could be themselves if that's the case. But each one of the 7 different types of cards has its own benefit or bad part. It could be like trade a number of cards from your hand with another player,
Okay.
or take one card that you previously played back into your hand, or show your hand to everybody else, or steal a card from another player that's installed and give them one of your installed, or flip over a card called an SRE card, which negates the ability of whichever one is face up. And what makes that interesting is that the end of the round is very simple. If you're able to play 6 of the 7 apps, the first player to get 6 apps immediately wins the round and gets a point. And you're playing to a certain number of points. However, if a player is forced to play a duplicate, because you can only have one of each copy of app in front of you, if you're forced to play a duplicate, everyone else gets a point instead. So it becomes less of I'm trying to make a set and more of like I'm trying to put this person in a position, forcing them to play so we all get points instead.
Okay.
It works really well. That was the highlight of the night. We all finished that and we're like, that game is awesome.
And the
like,
fact that you found this at a thrift store.
I found this at a thrift store. And on top of that, I was looking into the history of it. This was made in like 2007, right? Or no, it's 2013, the version that they printed, right?
Yeah.
So it's like 11 years old. They only printed like 700 copies.
And
only Google employees were allowed to buy it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was basically just strictly for Google, too.
Yeah, it was just for Google, and there was only like 700 copies. I found 2 sealed decks at a thrift store. Thank you, whichever Google employee that gave those away. Who's just like, I don't know. Because I bought it because I thought it was a deck of cards. I was like, I'll just get a promotional deck of cards. Cool. And I saw the name Michael Reineck on it, and I was like, wait a minute. What does he have to do with decks of cards, right? This game was fantastic. It works really well. I'm probably going to bring it next pick because I'm really excited to show you how. Once you get past the Google jargon, just the whole system, it's such a casual, fun system that I really enjoyed.
Nice.
So now let's get into today's main topic. We're going to be talking about games that did it better. Again, whether it's mechanism, theme, topic, whatever.
Open-ended?
Open-ended on purpose. But these are games that we found that just do something better than something that is normally compared to, or has some kind of comparison. Now, what was your criteria going into it? Did you have any specifics that you were like weren't allowing? Like I wasn't doing sequels, like or predecessors per se.
I wasn't really doing that as well. There is like on my list there is something that is it was like a first edition to a second edition, and I'll explain to why here when I come to it.
Right.
But yeah, I did something like that. But most of the time, it's like, oh, I'm not going to do horrified compared to say cryptid monsters and stuff like that because
Right.
at its core, it's still the same game.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I purposely tried to stay away from sequels if it was the same title. I also didn't stick with like new versions of a game, like so and I don't think this is on yours, but like I didn't do legacy versions of games that are already out. Personally.
No, I don't think I did Legacy.
Yeah.
I did do new versions of games, and again, one of those things that I will explain why.
Okay.
But yeah, all in all, nope. Just that was my main criteria. It's just like if it did something better, what did it do better, and why? So I'm not gonna say. Basically, Twilight Imperium 4 is not better than 3 because it's pretty much the same thing.
Right, and even if it was slightly different, it's still like that's the reason to make a new edition,
Yeah.
right? Is to improve or streamline certain aspects of it.
Now, I do have something in there, but again, I'll explain why in a little when it comes up.
All right, that sounds good. So then let's get into today's episode. We're gonna start with our first one. We're gonna flip our coin of doom and then I'll decide who talks first. So here we go. That'll be me. So this first one, I picked specifically a mechanism. The mechanism that I have for this one is kind of like a spatial action selection thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that I picked, the one that I don't think was as good, was newer actually and used this mechanism. I don't think it did it well, and this is Meadow.
Holy crap, we picked the same thing. This is my number 8 as well.
Wow.
I know it's the same game too.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so what Meadow does, there's a specific mechanism where it has like a 4x4 grid, and you have numbered tiles anywhere from 1 to 4.
Yeah.
You place it down in a row or column, and you count that number of spaces away, and you pick up that card. There's another game that did this a number of years before Meadow, and this is Quadropolis, and
I can't believe I said there's going to be zero crossover, and literally the
the very
one on the
first one, yeah.
is an exact crossover.
Right. So, I mean, explain why Quadropolis just does it better.
And it's kind of hard to explain. I like both games. In fact, I own both games. But the fact with Metal there's more steps to something that is just so simple.
Right.
With the way Quadropolis is that if you pick a number, you go down either a row or column just based on where you put it, and you go down that many spaces, and you're taking that token, and then you have to put that token in your personal city based on that number.
Yeah.
So if I'm going down 2 in here, and now I got to put it in my 2 slot in my thing.
Right.
And you're trying to do like a nice spatial awareness because these score really well next to these certain things, or this scores really well if you keep it away from this certain thing. So you have to be smart how you're doing it. Plus, there's also an architect who's blocking rows and columns.
Yeah.
So you can't really pick anything in that general area.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it just does it so much better. Whereas with Meadow, even though it's a gorgeous game, it's beautiful, and I do enjoy the game, it's just because you're using those numbers in 2 different areas. You're using it either on to get up the cards to put in your grid, or you're using it to move along this little rondelle track with tree stumps and stuff like that. That just doesn't work as well. Like I said, if they take just that section out of it and just do the card grid and building up your meadow and what, because I like the fact that you can stack cards on other cards. I think that's great, and it works really well. And that's what I really like about Meadow. But that other little rondelle area, it doesn't need to be there.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I mean, like Quadropolis, it has that extra step of like, if I use my 2, I pick the second tile, but I also have to put in my 2 row or column.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that Meadow has, I don't believe. You just put it with your stuff. That's just a drafting mechanism. And while it's a cool drafting mechanism, there's still that extra level of consideration when you use those tiles in Quadropolis that just make it work. It's like, yeah, I want all my like industrial buildings together, and I want them away from or away from residential.
Or parks.
I want to get this tile because it's going to give me population. I need more energy, so I want to get this tile.
Yeah.
Or I need to utilize this energy that I already have.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there's not much consideration, and it only works by placing it strategically. There's so much cool thought into it, and I feel like even though
And it's
like,
much quicker too.
it is much quicker. And I know that Meadow came out after, and I felt that this is kind of a cheat because Quadropolis did it better, and they were trying to capitalize on that idea, and
Because
Meadow just didn't do it well enough.
And the thing about it is, you can see what they did. You don't really see a lot of that mechanism in gaming right now, and they're like, okay, let's try this. Nature games have been really hitting.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, the art is fantastic metal, and the game is fine. I do like the game. It's just, it's a lot more steps that really needed to be.
Yep.
Even if you did, like, just a slight tweak to the mechanism with the number system and stuff like that, instead of playing that whole other aspect of it, it would have been a much better game.
Yep, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. All right, so let's go on to our number twos.
Sevens.
Or sevens, whatever. Yeah.
Back to you.
Right. So this one, I picked specifically the style of game, and what I mean by that is that the game that I'm going to talk about first is an asymmetric game. You're battling it out, trying to complete your objective before everybody else does, because the first one to complete their objective wins. This is Disney Villainous from Ravensburger, and I love all the different characters, all the different variations that they have with it, and all the way that the characters work differently. It's a really smart game that you could take these Disney villains and let's say Captain Hook, you want to beat Peter Pan, so you have to lure him to a certain spot and defeat him. He's a pretty powerful foe, but that makes sense for the movie. Whereas, like another example, Scar, you want to take over the kingdom, right, and dispose of Simba. You know, and there's all these different ways that you can approach it, and they were true to the source material in that the way that the characters work really do feel like the Disney characters, and because of all that variability in that Disney universe, there's so many cool options to do. So the game that did that better, though, was made by the same designers as Villainous, and it's also Disney themed, and it just came out last year.
Animated?
Animated, yeah. I mean, again, you feel like you're playing that movie, but because of the cooperative nature of it, you have a very asymmetric style, but you're playing in a cooperative setting, and that just makes it feel better. Like, I feel like that style was just honed in a little bit better because of that cooperative style on it. Because you're not just like, oh, I'm trying to do something drastically different than you, which is trying to do drastically different than that. And if I feel you're getting really close, I'm just going to throw a fake card at you and hurt you. No, this is like, hey, yeah, we all have our own specialties. I'm going to really be able to utilize this to help us out, but it's got to get to my turn first. I feel like that style is drastically different, and I absolutely adore animated. And I'm just a little sad that Funko Games sold, because now I don't think there's going to be any more animated.
I don't think there's going to be any expansions, because I doubt Goliath is going to do anything with it.
Right.
It's a shame. It was a fantastic game.
Yep.
All right, so my number 7, we've talked about this before. In fact, it was one of our first compare and contrast discussions. And I just think what this game did so much better when it comes to tactical card games. I think Unmatched did it better than Funkoverse.
Okay.
Those two, like, battler systems, whatever you want to call them, I don't really know what they're called. But I just think Unmatched did it better. It's much cleaner.
PvP.
PvP in a sense, because they changed it up, and that's another reason why I like Unmatched a little bit more. As you can tell up there, right above my head, I have the newest one, Shakespeare. It's just that it feels more thematic in a sense. I like the fact that I can do Robin Hood versus Bigfoot, or I can do in the co-op version of the games, or I can do Bigfoot versus Mothman, where you got like the two cryptids going at it. So it gives me a lot of that logical feel. Funko's really neat because it has a bunch of characters in it, but it's also very ugly in my estimation, because those bug-eye Funko Pops.
You don't like the Funko style, sure.
But it's not just me. There's a lot of people who don't like the bug-eye-ness of the Funko style.
Yeah.
The Funko is this generation's Beanie Babies. It really is. But the way on match works is that you pit a character, you take their cards, and you're just trying to PvP another player if you're playing the 2-player, or you're doing a free for all, or you're doing co-op in this aspect. And I think that's the one thing that on match really took it to the next step for me, is that they made it a co-op, so it makes it easier to teach people how to play the game.
Yep.
And they can go from the co-op to the PvP aspect of the game now that you know how to play your tactical cards.
Sure.
In the fact, just both of them have a lot of expansions. I just like the IPs a little bit more in On-Match. That helps. You got a lot of the Marvel characters that you don't really see based on the Marvel movies. So you have like Luke Cage. You have Squirrel Girl in one of the things. You have Miss Marvel, who's just starting to get the love right now. So you have all these different characters there. They're just bringing in The Witcher now. That's going to be their next set. And then you have like Shakespeare, and he's going up against his literary foes like Titania and the Wayward Sisters and Hamlet. So you have all those situations, and you can have Shakespeare going up against Houdini, or you got the genie who can fight against Bigfoot, which is, it's really neat, some of those concepts. And the fact that every card, every character, when you're playing the cards, you actually feel like you're playing as that character. So, like, I do feel like I'm Bigfoot swinging a log to hit someone in the face because that card's very powerful, and I do 7 damage to a person. So I just find Unmatched doing that tactical skirmisher card game a lot better than Funkoverse.
Sure.
And I'll even put against Sorcerer Arena, the Disney one, too. I've never played that one, but everything I've looked at, it just doesn't look fun to me.
That works. Cool.
Number 6.
Number 6.
This one's me. So number 6 is the one where I'm talking about how another edition did something better than the original edition. This is the one I kind of put in here as a cheaty pick, and I kind of hinted at it at the very top of the episode when I talked about the special edition by Awaken Realms of Castles of Burgundy over the Alea version, including the 20th anniversary or whatever it was version, or 10th anniversary edition of Castles of Burgundy. And it's just because they made some really, really smart changes in the special edition. First off, they made the colors much more easily readable.
Yep.
So I could tell the yellow tiles from the brown tiles or from the tan tiles and stuff like that. They changed the castles from like a green to a different, to the burgundy color, rather than, I think the castles were originally dark green when they went up against the fields, which are the animals, which were supposedly a lighter green. But that got mixed up with the tan colors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So just that aspect alone, hands down, made it so much easier for me to enjoy this game much more. But just some of the small stuff, like the honeycomb frame to keep everything, because that was one of my biggest complaints of Castles of Burgundy. If you slightly bump the table, everything slides around.
Yeah.
And so this kept it from doing that, and because of that honeycomb. But the fact that you can actually pay extra to modify it better. You're one of the people who talked about, like, you didn't really want to get into this new one because you put so much into your versions of it because you got the bags and all this and that. And I'm like, no, this version comes with the bags, which makes setup so much easier. And the thought that they went with how to put it in the insert fits all the special editions too. So, like, I can put my acrylic tiles into the special edition. I can put my new pieces into the bags and just leave them in there and stored. Everything underneath has like the new expansion, the Vineyards expansions, which is resource board stuff, and it just, they've had a very thought out process of how this fits just in the box alone. And then another thing, what I like about this game compared to the Alea, it is so much more readable. Like, you can tell that's 3 sheep, that is 3 pigs, without having to go, what is that? Where's the magnifying glass where you can figure out what everything is, possibly? Sure. The rule book, or they give you a player reference where you could just go, okay, this is what this building power does. Fantastic, really well done. So I honestly think the special edition of Awaken Realms is what I would recommend people to go after. It's a little pricey, but it's gonna not. I'm gonna keep my copy of Castles of Burgundy, my original edition, just because of the nostalgia aspect of stuff.
Right, same here.
But another thing too, they went away from the brown and grayscale that Alea does, and you see it in some of their newer games, like Carpe Diem. They've had to reprint that how many times just to make it much easier for people to see it. Awakened Realms did Castles of Burgundy once and already knocked the layout out of the park.
I don't disagree with you. This is less of a game that did it better than a publisher that did it better. Huh?
Yeah, this is more of a publisher that did it better for the same exact game that you can get from both companies.
Right, exactly. So my number 6 is, it's an interesting one because this one, I put the goal does it better. And in this one, there's a lot of talk about the best engine building game. And a lot of people say Wingspan, a lot of people say Everdell, a lot of people say Terraforming Mars, which this comparison I'm using Terraforming Mars because your ultimate goal in Terraforming Mars is that you are terraforming a planet and adding in plants and animals and changing climate ish. You're building up that ecosystem.
But you're also building cities and stuff like that. So
but you're building up that ecosystem, that biodome, biosphere, whatever, right? Which makes sense. However, here's the problem. That game outstays its welcome. And the short version, Ares Expedition, for card games, outstays its welcome. And the dice version I've heard is not very good. I haven't played it yet, and I don't plan on it. Yeah. But the problem that I have with all of these is that there was so much hype regarding all of these games that it made it not worth playing the game for the goal, because the goal is do I really feel like I'm terraforming Mars? Not really. Now, granted, this other one doesn't feel like you're terraforming that much more than it is, but the way it works is a lot cleaner. Do you know which one this is?
Oh, it's Earth.
Earth, of course.
Hey, you stole my idea, all right?
No, I mean, but it's 100% I agree with it, because...
But that's what we're doing next month.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's why we're doing it. That's why I thought of it. No, because it's very true. Terraforming Mars and Earth, I like Earth way better because since everybody's playing simultaneous actions, it's just clearer. It just makes more sense, and there's not one player that's bogging everything down with it.
Well, you're also paying attention to what other people are doing because you get a trigger reward too.
Right, exactly. And then on top of it, and that's why I compared it to the goal, right? This does that goal better. Your goal is to build a planet and have the best biodiversity and have the cards play off of each other. To an extent, right?
Ecosystem.
That's a better, the best ecosystem, so the cards utilize each other the best.
Yes.
Terraforming Mars, when you do that, you might put some tiles on the board, but they're pretty much one and done, right? There's ways to get more cards, there's ways to utilize certain ones, and it's fine. I don't dislike Terraforming Mars, but that was just yet another notch in it's not worth the hype that a lot of people claim it as. Now, Earth that came out, oh my gosh, this is 100% worth that hype.
Okay. I don't disagree with you. I mean, but I'm like, dude, we're going to be talking about that next week. In fact, we were supposed to talk about it next week. Yeah. We had to move it to next month because of rescheduling.
Yep. And I agree with it because it really does it better. All right, on to our number 5.
So this one is me again, and but this one's a little interesting. It's the same designer for both of these games, and then he just made this mechanism just work a little bit better in the newer game than he did in the first game. This is Bruno Cathala, and the game is that just is weaker out of the two is Ishtar.
Oh, gotcha.
Where you're doing kind of like a tile placement in your grid. You're trying to build up your area to score your points. And it's based on building flowers and stuff like that in I think Babylon, if I remember correctly. It's been so long since I played this one.
Yeah.
This same mechanism he took and did it with Pandasaurus and put I guess you want to say a Greek theme on it, kind of like a fantastical Greek theme. This is Orichalcum. And it just works so much better. It's quicker for one thing. It's not as long as Ishtar. I could probably play Orichalcum in about 45 minutes to half an hour or hour and a half, depending on if it's new teach or people are very consistent with playing this game. Say I've played it a couple times, I know it works. So it's a tile laying game that's based on set bonuses, how you build your grid, that you can get special titans that can give you special powers, but someone could take it from you by doing something as well. So it's very intriguing how that works. And then there's different areas you can go into. So I can build up my hunting group, or I can build up my victory points and stuff like that based on something. If I do this, I take this victory point, but if I don't keep it, someone can take that from me. And so it's like the first to a certain amount of points triggers the end game. And it does it so much easier and simpler and is better looking than Ishtar. And so Orichalcum is my pick of the better tile placement bonus game by Bruno Cathala.
Yep. Okay. My number 5, I'm basing this on the inspiration that the game came with.
Okay.
And because I feel like one game inspired the game I'm about to talk about, and then this game inspired another game that did everything way better.
Okay.
So, I mean, Catan is this massive juggernaut of a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I bring it up is because what the main mechanism is called random resource distribution or allotment or something like that. Resource
Random
generation.
Random number generator is basically
random
what it is.
number, right. And based on some dice rolls, that will allot players certain resources. And this game, it's a small Japanese game that, and this isn't, I'm not saying this is the better one. This is where it comes from. A Japanese designer saw that idea and was like, okay, what if I make like a city game? And this is Machikoro.
Yeah.
And the only resource is money, but your cards work and get your money in different ways and manipulate off each other. But it's down to the die roll.
I know what does it better.
And I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
And this game, or Machikoro inspired this game from friend of the podcast, John D. Clare. He made Space Base, which uses that as a groundwork of let's use those 2 dice, either combine the 2 or separate them, launch your ships, get the best options, deploy your ships, get better ships, build it up, build this engine. But what does it better, and this is the inspiration, the reason why this does better, is that in Catan, there is a number of opportunities where you just won't get anything. You thought I was going to say Kingsburg. I don't blame you. There's a lot of times that you just won't get anything in that. Whereas Machikoro, it's a lot more likely you'll get stuff. You can build that engine a lot quicker, and the way that people play off of each other works really well. But the only interaction that we have from each other is nasty. It's mean, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in Space Base, no, you just get way more options.
Yeah.
And there becomes a tipping point during the game where you are suddenly doing more on other players' turns than you do on your own. And that is huge, and it makes it so engaging for players. I was discussing this with my wife just the other day, and we're talking about games that like my kids like versus like my parents versus my wife and whatnot. And my kids asked me, like, what kind of games does mom like? And I'm like, games that she can be involved in every player's turn. That is really her thing. She likes clever games. She likes all that stuff just fine. But what really sets Space Base apart, and like other games like that, is that she's considering her turn. She's doing these options while we're playing, and she's able to do a lot of really cool stuff, even though we're on our turn. That's meaningful.
Yeah.
And so Space Base did better than Machikoro, which does it better than Catan.
What's funny is this would have been on my list if I ever thought about Machikoro. That's how much I'm indifferent towards Machikoro.
Right. And I mean, it was a big game in our family. Like, we really enjoyed it ever since 2015 when I bought it, right?
Yeah.
And we've loved that game.
There is
but
a game.
Space Base does it better.
There is a game that is kind of based on that I want to try. Bad Company. I heard.
Sure.
That kind of does that mechanism too. I want to see how that works because it looks really good.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be down to try that. All right. On to our number 4s.
All right. And this is you.
All right. My number 4, these have very similar ideas, and they took the same idea, and one of them built on it and made it elegant. So the first one I want to talk about, the original game, the idea of this is how do I communicate very limited information so they'll slowly start dwindling away. And this is a game called One Key, and you're trying to find the keys of certain pictures, and they have these cool like cards that are shaped like different items, and they're kind of strangely illustrated. And I'm trying to say, hey, this card is either similar or dissimilar from the one that I'm trying to get to. And immediately you figure that out because I said that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Horrible Guild, or Horrible Games or whatever.
Horrible Guild.
They took just a deck of like 20-something cards, like 24 cards. And it was like, yeah, let's put like characters on it and then play this game. And it works so much better. They streamlined it. It's cleaner. It's more concise. This is Similo. My goodness, is that such a good game. When I found out about Similo, after I had a copy of One Key, I got rid of my one key because it's a much bigger production. It just is not as clean, but it has the same idea and it just does it so concisely that it's brilliant. So Simula.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you on that one. In fact, what I like about Simula too is that pick your poison. You want Lord of the Rings? There's Lord of the Rings. You like Harry Potter? There's Harry Potter. If you don't like any of those, say you like Universal Monsters, get Spookies. It has some of the Universal Monsters in there. You got Frankenstein's monster, you got the werewolf and stuff like that in there. Yep. So you have your choices on there. If you can find it, there's a Essen Spiel version of it too, where you basically are. This game is similar to this game type thing, and I want to get a copy of that version.
It's ridiculous.
All right, so my number 4. This is a game that the publisher did a second version, or not the publisher, the designer did actually a third version of it. He did a co-design with another person just to make it much simpler for a certain player count. But I think the original game is not as good as the newest game that's out here. And so the original game is Seven Wonders.
Okay, yep, this is what I thought. Yep.
And so when I was saying that it also did a 2-player version of it, Seven Wonders Duel with Bruno Cathala, this is not the one I picked, because I think Seven Wonders Architects does what Seven Wonders tries to do better. Yes. Because all it does is concentrate on building the wonders.
Yes.
That is the name of the game. Let's concentrate on that aspect of the game.
It was the first one that did it.
Yeah, and so it was what they did for this made it, one, much more simpler, a lot easier to teach. Then maybe people can get into the bigger Seven Wonders game, because it's still got a little bit of drafting in it, because you're either drafting a card from your neighbor on your left, your neighbor on your right, because those are the 2 cards that you can pull from, or from the middle. And you may have a special power where you can see the card that's coming from the middle, because that's blind. Your left and right cards are face up, so you know what's going to be there.
Yep.
But if you have the cat statue, you can actually look what's in the middle, put it back down, and then decide out of the 3 cards. And then you're just either gaining resources, you're gaining military. If you're gaining science, you get a certain number and you can pull a science reward, which gives you a special power.
Yep.
If you have enough resources, you could build a piece of your wonder. The first person to build all your pieces of wonder, which I think is 5 pieces, hits the end game trigger. Whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. This game plays so quickly and so well done that even though I collect Kennerspiel games, I only need one more Kennerspiel to add to my collection. I don't want to buy it, but I'm going to. I just want to catch it on a deal, because I just think...
You're going to find it for like $15 at a thrift store.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I'd rather play Seven Wonders Architect over Seven Wonders, because it does a lot of the things that Seven Wonders does, gives you the same feel of being clever in building your wonder within asymmetrical powers based on your civilization.
Yep.
But without having to, spend an hour or 2 hours. And don't get me wrong, Seven Wonders, if you know how you're playing it, can go pretty quickly based on the draft. But honestly, when I have a choice of 3 cards rather than a deck of 5 cards in my hand, it makes it a much quicker draft. I'm like, I'm going to take that resource instead of that and that.
Yep.
That's simple.
Yep.
You know what? I don't like that choice. I don't like that choice. I'm going to take blind off the top and see what happens.
Exactly.
Seven Wonders Architect does it way better than Seven Wonders.
Yeah, it does. Cool. All right. Number 3.
This one's me, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So, this one, I had to go back and forth on this one, because I really have been going heavy and hawing on theme and stuff like that. Or I didn't want to do too much theme. There's one more theme, I guess you could say, on here.
Right.
So I only have 2, in a sense, but I'm also going on the style of game, in a sense. The game that I am saying doesn't do it well is Nations. Now, Nations, the dice game, does fantastic, but I'm talking about the actual civilization game, Nations. And I think Through the Ages, I think the 2nd edition is what I'm going to be comparing it. Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization, which is the 2nd edition of Through the Ages, I think does better than Nations. First off, it's better looking. 2, it's a lot more smart play. I like the fact that you have a little bit of military to work with. And I like the fact that you can actually make it a shorter game by only playing certain scenarios, where Nations you have to play all the way through. Now, if you want a big, epic, grandiose civilization game, then you play it all the way through Act 3. But you don't have to. But I just think it just feels so much better than Nations. Nations, you've got this really long brown board where you're moving up tracks, which is kind of cool at times. But the card art, the card stock, the actual feel, I actually feel like I'm playing Civilization, the video game. And that's what they were trying to do when they're trying to convert these Civilization games to board game style. In fact, there's a little Easter egg in Through the Ages that one of the, I think, Generation 3 or Act 3 leaders is Sid Meier, who created the Civilization video games. And so I love everything about Through the Ages does, to the point, like, after I had both Nations and Through the Ages, after playing Through the Ages, the board game itself, outside of the app, because the app is spectacular too, outside of the app, I sold my Nations because Through the Ages did it so much better. You get that Civilization feel. If you're into that strategy game of Civilization, you do have the 4X capability where you're conquering lands or you're going to war with other players to a sense, because you're using your warriors to go conquer a new land or island and stuff like that to give you resources later on. You get to change your government powers, so you go from a despot to a monarchy to a democracy to communism if you want to. It just gives you that gorgeous feel. I love how you gotta balance, making sure your people are happy and not causing unrest, and it gives you there's a lot of moving parts, but it really feels like you're playing a Civilization game on your computer on the board.
Cool. All right, my number 3. This is better components, and by that I mean that one game doesn't just have better components than the other.
Yeah.
But they both have a very specific type of component that they need, and they both functionally work with it well, but one game, just the game overall does it better, and because it utilizes the component better. And these are Venn diagrams, and the first game that I talked about was Venn. Venn by the Op. It's a nifty little game. It's a team game similar to like Codenames. You're trying to get 3 different words out of a pool of 12. And you have these really strange, surreal art cards, and you're either putting them in one of the sections, or in the middle of everything, or in the middle of 2 sections, or whatever, right? And you can put 1 card for each of those, and they're bizarre art. I mean, it's fun. I love the art on it. But that, like, coupled with, I was going into this game. I actually played it earlier this week, and I was going into this game.
So before you can keep going on, but can I guess what the game that replaces it is when you get to that point?
Yeah. So this one, this game, Venn, it works. And then if you find a card that's better, you put it down. The problem that I have with it is that you have this massive stack of like 100 cards, and they're double-sided. You literally just split half and half, and so you're just digging through cards. You're like, okay, that one will work there. All right, let's try this one. And I had one like exciting, foot, and unhinged or something like that. Like those were the word combinations that I had. It's like, how do you combine these, right? And so at first I went into it really expecting to dislike it. And after playing it, I was like, okay, it's actually a lot better than I was expecting. It's fun. It's a good game that works really well. But there is a different Venn diagram game that does it better.
Is it the all-play one?
Yes.
Things and Rings?
Things and Rings, yes. And the way that works is...
What's funny, you saw both of those games at the Expo.
Yes. Yes, I did. And at separate years, of course.
Yeah.
Venn's been out for a few years. But the difference that this makes is that, yes, you're using the Venn diagram, and there's one person who's giving the information and confirming stuff, but everybody else is the one is trying to be the first player to figure it out. It works more like Zendo in logical deduction, is that if I put a card down, I'm shooting in the dark, but it's like, okay, if I think it's a similar in this aspect of it, like the blue ring or whatever it is, I forget the 3 different rings, like purpose or something like that. Yeah, if I put it down in one, and more than likely you're going to get them wrong every single time at the beginning, the game master will be like, no, that's not correct, but this is where it would go. And they put it there. And in Zendo, it's a logic game from Looney Labs.
Yeah.
It works in that same idea. It's like, I'm going to put down these pyramids in a certain way. Is this correct? And they're like, no, but this is how it would be correct. This is a structure that does match the thing. So you get privy to information, and you don't have to figure out exactly what it is, You just have to figure out which of your cards would fit correctly in which spot.
Yeah.
And that's a much more meaningful way to do it instead of just like I'm trying to guess which of the 3 out of 12 words you're trying to guess with this weird picture of like somebody holding an umbrella with cats shooting out of it. I don't know, some weird art. It just does it better. The components work better. The ring is just a loop of string. That's all you need. Whereas I think like you have big like plastic discs for Ven, which work pretty well. But I think the reason that they did that is because they can do it cheaply. But at the same time, you can only fit a single card on the certain spots, and the cards are bigger than the spots that they overlay.
Yeah.
So there's always like parts of it sticking off or overlapping on other parts. I don't know. It just didn't quite work enough for me, and Rings and Things definitely did.
Nice. Things and Rings, or Rings and Things?
Rings and Things, I think. Or it might be Things and Rings.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it makes more sense if it's Things and Rings.
I think it's saying like rings in. Like N apostrophe things, like and. But anyway, it doesn't matter. You get the all play Venn diagram game. You'll figure it out. All right, our number two.
This is you.
All right, this is the only one where I went strictly with the theme. Which one does the theme better? And they both work very similarly, but I think one of them brings out the theme just better, just because it's cleaner. And this is a Native American theme, and the one I was talking about. And as much as I love Stefan Feld,
I know what you're going to talk about.
Kokopelli, which is right here. You can see it right down yonder. I do really like Kokopelli. It works really fun.
It's good.
But there is one game that just hands down does it better in almost every aspect. It's prettier. It's more streamlined. It's up in the corner there.
Oh, there it is. I see it.
It's simpler. It's more streamlined. It handles the subject matter, I think, a little bit more comfortably, or respectfully, even in that aspect.
Yeah.
The art is better. The components are better. And yeah, just an overall
Boards and Dice.
It's just better. Boards and Dice, yeah. This is Inuit from Boards and Dice, which is a shame because they're not printing it anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't think they will, unfortunately. But if you can get your hands on a copy of Inuit, they're both card-based action selections. You have a single board of what you can play off of. Excuse me. And each of the different types of cards have a different kind of action. You can either get elders, you can get hunters, you can get all these different things, or seers to help you look at more cards or draw more cards or whatever, workers, and it just works really well.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I can't believe how well that engine does, and knowing that Stefan Feld made a Native American themed game called Kokopelli,
which is actually to our local area.
Yes,
too.
Which is our local area. Yeah, absolutely. Like the Apache and I think Navajo.
I think the Kokopelli is Pueblo. I want to say
it could be. Yeah, and forgive me if that I'm
or
wrong
no,
on that,
I think it's Hopi.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's Hopi.
We'll research it later.
Yeah.
But that is native to our area, and it was a theme that I'm very attracted to. I love Kokopelli stuff, and it was one of my favorite designers. So I was like, surely this is gonna be better, right? And it really wasn't. Inuit is just so much cleaner, so much better. I love it. So there you go. Inuit, better theme.
All right, so my my number two is actually another theme-based one too. And once I tell you the games that I'm comparing it to, it's going to give away what the theme is. So I'll let you guess what theme I'm going to be talking about here. But the games that don't do it well, and I put 2 games that don't do it well, and one game actually replaces both of those.
Yep.
And this is Tiny Epic Western.
Okay. Yep.
And Great Western Trail.
Yep.
Those are the games that have that theme on it, but it's just not really there.
Yep.
And what game does it better?
Western Legends, yes.
Because Western Legend does allow you to feel that it is Pueblo. Okay, that you are playing a Western movie.
Yep.
So you could be a cattle rustler if you want. And the fact that it's open world too. I can just go to town and play some poker games. I can be an outlaw if I want to, or I can be the lawman and go get a bounty because he's the outlaw. It's just so open world, so fantastic. When you get into one of the expansions, it allows you to rob trains, and so you have like all these little fun aspects of this game that really makes it feel like you're playing a Western movie. And then to top it all off, everybody plays a certain character that has some epic lore in Western. I could be Billy the Kid. You could be what's her name, Calamity Jane,
Yep.
Buffalo Bill.
Yep.
And they all play differently, so you have that power. You're playing. You can go play poker and be Wyatt Earp.
Yep.
So it is very very well done. It really brings out that Western theme. Really great designs. I love the little poker chips for money and stuff like that. Doc Holliday, there you go. Yeah, it's fantastic game, and Colossal Games really knocked it out of the park on this one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to their hidden stuff that they're talking about here in a little bit. That they may be making like a legacy game, or maybe making a campaign book to put on top of the game. Western Legends stories that they're hinting at. That looks interesting. So yeah, just Western Legends. This is the first game I thought of because out of all the Western games I played, and I own one other one. I own the Great Western Trail. It just really comes out as that. You feel like you're in a Western movie.
Yep. Cool. All right, and our number ones. Ooh, almost lost that coin.
You almost hit the mic.
I almost hit the mic. Thank goodness I didn't. You're welcome, listeners at home. All right, our number one. So this game is definitive. This is my overall category, and not just like overall this is just a better game. No, I mean like in every aspect.
Okay.
This game does it better than the predecessor. I used it correctly this week.
Mm-hmm.
So the original game is a card game from Amigo called Delt, and or like checker, cross checker, or whatever. I forget what it is.
I think I played this one.
Maybe I've played it once. I own it still. And in this game, it's a shedding game where you're trying to play sets of cards, either in runs or sets or whatever. But the biggest catch about this game, and this is one of the few that you have to do it, you can't change the order of the cards in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately loved this theme because I'm like, that's cool. I love that idea. You can't change the cards because I love Bonanza and that does it. But you're playing the cards in order from front to back. And so I was like, okay, that's cool. You can't change the cards. You can only play with adjacent cards, and you're trying to shed your cards from there.
I already know what does it better.
Yep. And then Oink Games came out with a game that not only does that same idea, not only adds in the fact that they are double-sided cards, which is honestly a gimmick, but it works still really well. It's not just a gimmick. It actually works functionally really well in the game. But then, on top of it, you're not just trying to play better, increasingly better and better and better cards. No, you're trying to beat it, but if you can't, you can instead scout and steal a card from the player who did, giving them a point to do it, but you get one of those cards to add to your hand on either of the two sides. That combination alone took the game Delt and just made it incredibly fascinating. And it really is like they took Delt and it's like, how can we just bump it up to 11? Mm-hmm. And the card stock is great. The tokens are good. Fits in the Oink size box. I like the circus theme, even though it's very pasted on. I like the color scheming of it. The card components are good. That extra 2 mechanisms are great. It's a functionally just brilliant game. Oh my goodness, I cannot tell you how much. Like, I don't know why I still own Delt. I really don't, because I'm not going to play it if given that option.
Yeah, if you have a choice between Delt and Scout.
I'm going to play Scout, hands down, because it just does it better in every single way.
Yeah, exactly. And what I like about Scout too, and I know you mentioned it, but the way the cards go. So like if you have to take a card up, you can put it any way you want in the deck. Yeah. This way, so if it's a 9 here and a 3 here, you can put it where it fits best in your hand. You just can't, once it's in your hand, you can't change its location.
Exactly. But then that gives you 2 meaningful choices every single time.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it makes it easier for the next player to potentially beat
the cards out in the front. Yeah.
It's not just play it out. It's like, oh, I got a 4 of a kind. Nobody else did. Ha, I win the round. No. If I play a 4 of a kind and you're the next player, you take one of them. Now it's only a 3 of a kind. Our second player takes one. Now it's only a pair.
Yeah.
Well, this guy could probably beat a pair.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Oh my goodness, is that brilliant? And Delt doesn't do that.
Yeah, no, it's a good pick. I played Delt, I think. I don't know. I have to look at the cards, But honestly, if I had thought about it, I might have put it on this list.
Right.
I just didn't think about it.
Well, Delt meant nothing to you prior to that, really.
Yeah, really, not
it
much.
did to me because I was already invested from day one, and then when I found out about Scout, I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be better than Delt. And I played it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's better than Delt.
All right, so for my number one, this was easily my number one because even though I own both of these games, I play one significantly more than the other. And so I'll give you a hint and see if you can guess what the two games are. It is a party co-op game with limited communication.
Codenames? Or just one?
You actually got both.
Yep.
Codenames, I think, is the worst game out of the two, and I think Just One just does it better.
Yep.
Much better.
What is your number?
One.
That'll be the only time I do it, I promise.
It's a better implementation of the limited communication because I have a 1 through 5. I pick a number, and everybody else has to give you a one-word clue. And if there's any pairs or multiples of the same clue, then those are eliminated, and you got to give a clue. There's not a likelihood of hitting an assassin or giving other team another point. You are working together as a group to score as high as possible.
Gotcha.
And so I like that first off more. I like the fact that it's not team versus team. It's more everybody working together. It's a straight up true co-op party game. Mm-hmm. Second off, what I like about it too, it actually is a party game. You can play up to the 7 out of the box of people. And you can play up more if you want to, if you have dry erase boards and stuff like that. But it plays significantly better because when it comes down to it, at best, Codenames is a 4-player game. It's not truly a party game when it comes into like a team versus team because you got one person giving clues and one person guessing. Yeah. It's still going to be one person giving clues if you're playing with more people. It's just that the team is going to be bigger on the other side trying to guess. And it just doesn't feel like that fun. Someone who's maybe a quiet person or an introvert that doesn't really want to be, wants to be more of a fly on the wall type thing. Sure. Doesn't really want to talk or maybe getting overridden by, say, like an alpha gamer, like the quarterbacking of a co-op game. Just One, you don't have that problem because of the communication. You're just writing a word, and all you hear when you're the clue giver or the one that has to guess is all you hear on the other side of the things is like, when something happens, you're like, oh, God, how many am I going to get to guess from? Right. And so I love that aspect of it. Again, like I said, it's bigger with better crowds. There's a lot more interaction because you could hear people like, why would you go there? I was going to go there and stuff like that. Or sometimes I've heard it like, why would you pick that? Who is going to get that other than, say, the inside joke with your husband or something like that? Sure. I am the one that has to guess, not him type thing. So
he's on the opposite team. What in the world?
Yeah, so it's just better possible clues, much more better with live, bigger crowds. It's just a fantastic game. There's a reason why it won the Spiel des Jahres, Just One over Codenames.
But both of them did, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I actually thought about Codenames, and I put Decrypto as the one that did it better, but it's same idea.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my shortlist ones real quick. I also had Resistance and Cosmic Encounter, but although they're very different feeling games, right? But they do the negotiation pretty well. I also have Nar and Splendor, because I think Nar does it better than Splendor.
I had Her Story in Splendor.
Yeah, I can see that. Eminent Domain and Race for the Galaxy for space card management games.
I've never played Race for the Galaxy, so
yeah.
I had Eminent Domain versus Dominion on my short list.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Because of, the pile of cards.
Yep. Rear Window and Mysterium.
I can see that one. Yep.
Yeah. And Final Girl and Hostage Negotiator.
Yeah, I can see that. I never played
Hostage. I didn't pick that one just because it really is a kind of a sequel.
Yeah, yeah.
And then finally Spyfall and Werewolf. Those are the other ones I picked.
Yeah, no, I get that. I didn't have as big of a short list as like once I got my 8, I got my 8. And I'm good.
Yeah. I just kept like going, oh, that one does it. Oh, that one does it. Ooh, that one's good too. Yeah, I just kept going. So we hope you enjoyed that episode today. That was a very interesting topic. Again, sorry about rescheduling for this week. We'll have our special guest on next week, and that'll be a fun one. But if you ever want to join us or contact us directly, whether it's to enter in future contests, just to say hello, or possibly give us ideas for future episodes, unlike the random rescheduling we've been doing, you can email us at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com. And finally, we have an Instagram at instagram.com/everydayboardgames.
As well as you can find all video re-uploads on YouTube under youtube.com/@everydayboardgames. And if you like what we do, there are 3 things you can do to help us grow on the platform. Subscribe if you're not, like the video, and comment down below and tell us your thoughts on the subject. Tell us what game did it better.
And if you want to join us on a live episode and provide commentary, we love hearing from you guys and the live fans, like our friends Mario Fanatics, Creative Chaos, and Ithri. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Join us at twitch.tv/everydayboardgames.
As well as all audio versions can be found on most podcast platforms under Everyday Board Games Podcast. This includes Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, Podbean, and Apple.
So we want to thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I've been your host, Daniel.
And I've been your host, Daniel.
And we want to thank you for listening to Everyday Board Games.
And remember, every day is a good day for board gaming.